I think protecting freedom against radicals is a really, really Herculean task, right? And I think it's certainly not going to be easy for any of the countries to be able to deal with this larger challenge that we all face. But one thing is clear, that being able to speak freely about who the people are who are engaged in terrorism, right, and what are their motivations for doing what they do, right, will be one first step. So what I find quite often that many, for example, the Paris bombing was somehow rationalized by some of the spokespeople, say even in India, right? This is the sort of side effect of the Western imperialism, right? So West has been dominating the world. They have done a lot of atrocities across the world, and this is now the time to pay back to them. So if the thinking is along those lines, then obviously we would have almost impossible task on our hand to deal with the terrorist threat. So I think first thing would be to be honest and open about who the people are and what are their motivations, right? And something that is not yet common across countries who are suffering from this tragedy. I think second is, my sense is just sort of simple rule of law. At one level it seems very simplistic, but my sense is that I see, for example, in India, there was recent incidents where a person was lynched, right, by a mob. Right? The whole thing was caught on camera. There are people who are filming actually what happened, right? But there is no punishment given to the people who are involved. They are not behind bars. There are no cases on them, right? So here you have a very direct visual evidence, right, of who has been committing those crimes. But why isn't it possible to use that evidence to prosecute some of these individuals? And that always baffles me in terms of the simple rule of law, right? Similar thing happened in terms of riots that happen in India. Quite often riots are caught live by TV crew. I mean, you see rioters walking down the street with the camera actually facing them, right, with these sort of small weapons in their hand, and they are looting and killing people, which is all on camera. People see they sitting in the drawing room, what's happening, right? But none of that evidence, unfortunately, is being used to prosecute people who engage in this act. So I think our tolerance for violence under any guise has to be zero, right? Whether I'm committing violence in the name of religion, committing violence in the name of my caste or my class, or just whatever my beliefs are, right? For any excuse for violence cannot be tolerated and should not be tolerated. I think the big message obviously from India is non-violence, right? And that other side of the coin is being intolerant about violence, right? I think I see a lot of rationalization and justification for this kind of violence by spokespeople of various communities and groups in the country. And I think somehow we have to deal with that problem in each of our countries, right? There's a violence obviously by some of the neo-Nazi groups in many of the Western and Southern European countries, right? And how do you stand up to that kind of internal violence, which allows you then they have the moral certitude to stand up to violence of the others, right? So if you don't stand up to violence of your own people, then it's quite difficult to say we're going to stand up and bomb the other people who are committing the similar kind of violence, right? So I think being fully intolerant, having zero tolerance for violence is probably one first step in the direction of dealing with this threat.